This week was a exciting week, and I wanted to share a couple things as we walk through here today. So the first one is how to attract A players, what it means for your business when you attract A players. The second is going to be a big lesson that I learned over the last couple of years, and that is practice the strategy before you actually need to implement it, which means planning for the future. Third thing we're going to go through today is how to review your cost of goods and potentially have some profitability that drops right to the bottom line. And finally, one of the most important things, celebrating the early successes. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of bringing on A players. And I had a moment this week that was pretty exciting, and that's kind of what I wanted to share with you. Had a conversation with an individual who had reached out to me. We had a conversation a few months back. And in that conversation, we were talking about kind of being a part of the teams, kind of some different things that were going on. Well, it ultimately wasn't the best timing, best fit at that particular point in time. So fast forward now, and a little over a week ago or so, he reaches out and was like, "Hey, I want to have a conversation." So we sit down, we have this amazing conversation earlier this week. And this conversation was all about, "Hey, I can tell that you guys have shifted. Your business is in a completely different spot than it was before. I can tell by the job ads that are out there, the content that's being pushed out, all of it. Like, it feels like you guys are at this inflection point of moving to the next layer." And I would call this individual an A player. This was just such a tremendous shift in our ability to understand how our business is operating when we have individuals on the team, or individuals in the community that are looking at, how do I become a part of what you guys are building? And when you do this right, when you share the message and you share the vision, these things become a reality. So know that it is possible, and it's really cool to see that. The next big thing in this last week is to remember that practicing the strategy early is the cheat code to success long term. So let me explain what I mean. There was an exercise back in the day that my coach had me go through about 2 years ago. And this was a process of going through acquisition. So we'll go through the process of like buying a business. And what he had told me is like, one, go do the research, go do as much of the research as possible, find a bunch of deals, and then I want you to start making offers. So go through this process, and I have to put together an offer. So I found a couple that were good enough to put some level of letter of intent or offer on. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I haven't done this before. I got to figure out how to have those conversations. I got to figure out how to write the letter of intent. And I'll never forget, my coach had reached out and he's like, all right, I want you to write the letter of intent. I want you to send me a copy of it. Because when you do that, I'll be able to see where your knowledge base is at. I'm like, all right. So I go through this process. And I put together this document, and it's like a page and a half. Thought it was pretty good. Sent it over to my coach, and he looks at it. He's like, okay, now I understand where you're at. Here's a couple lessons to go through. And he sends me a template that's like 12 pages long. It's like, oh, okay. Lots of things to learn. So walked through that process. I actually had to put in some offers that ultimately were rejected, things like that. That was the purpose. The purpose was to go through the practice, learn the process of going through the conversations, because you never know when the right deal is going to come up. So what's really cool is being able to take a look back and say, okay, well, now there have been a couple opportunities where we've started to have conversations with potential acquisitions or potential business deals. And by golly, by going through that exercise in the past, I knew exactly what to do. I had the template. I knew what to put in. I knew how to have the conversation. And it was I wouldn't say stress-free, but it was effective for me to have those conversations, where if it was the first time going through it, I might have bungled up the best deals that we could potentially take a look at. So practice the strategy early. Now, I think that plays out in so many different ways, but that's just an example. Practice the strategy early, plan for what the needs are going to be of the future, learn and do the work now before it becomes the thing that you actually have to do. The third thing I wanted to share with y'all today, based on this week's process, was the process of how do we increase profitability without getting more sales? So I was working with a client in this process, and ultimately the scenario is that we focus on cost of goods, right? So this particular client has a heavy cost of goods business, lots of materials and things of that nature. So what we did is we pulled up on a whiteboard and we wrote out cost of goods and all the different categories of cost of goods. So this could be look very different in your business versus my client's business, but it's things like materials, merchant fees, shipping costs, and labor costs for work that's being done, things like that. So we went through this and we said, what are all the things that we can impact? And probably more importantly, if you do nothing today, are these things going to go up? Are they going to stay the same? Or are they going to go down? Reality is, in most cases today, these things are going to go up. So it's like, okay, well, if they're going to go up, what are the levers that we can pull on each one of these? So I'll give you a couple of examples just to get you thinking on how to go through this particular process. Materials or supplies of some sort, things that you need in order to produce the things that you're providing within your business. It's like, all right, well, how do we get that number to go down, like percentage wise to go down? How do we get lower costs on that? Because material costs over year are likely to go up over time. So how do we control this? And it's like, all right, well, one of the things that we can do is we can look at, how do suppliers give discounts? Well, they tend to give discounts if we buy more stuff. So it's like, all right, well, if we do bulk orders, can we get a discount on that deal, right? Can I get a 5% discount or 3% discount if I buy my entire year's supply up front? Now, yes, that does require to have the capital to be able to go do that. But by going through that process, that entire discount drops immediately to the bottom line. Second thing that we can do is like, all right, well, Tanner, that doesn't work for me in my business. It's not going to be able to work that way. It's like, all right, well, I don't have the capital, whatever it is. Now, what you might want to do is look at, how do I create a buying group? So if if there's other providers in your area that are all going to need the same types of materials or supplies or things like that, how can you go in together and buy the material together so you can get that bulk discount without having to take all of that inventory for yourself? Very simple example of this is when you buy tons of material. So we just set up a custom shop for clothing, things like that for our business. And there's like bulk discount orders. Like you get to 4 or more items, there's these kind of tiered discounts. It's like, all right, cool. But do I need to buy 4, 5, 6 different articles of clothing for me individually? No, probably not. But what if I got everybody on my team and we'll just go in, we'll do one order so we can get the max amount of discount that we can, and it ends up being lower cost for everybody. It's the same basic concept here. Now, on a labor perspective, probably the easiest, biggest lever that you can pull there is no overtime. Like staff effectively and appropriately to make sure that there is no overtime that's ever paid. That's probably the easiest, maybe not easiest, simplest lever that you can pull in that particular case, and the one that's going to have probably the biggest impact. For merchant services, if you haven't, go have a conversation with your banker, go have a conversation with your local regional financial partners and find out what types of services that they have available. What are their treasury management services? What are the merchant service type things that they have available? Can they get you a lower percentage? If you're running everything through Stripe or everything through QuickBooks and you're doing more volume, there are other providers out there that you might be able to tap into at your local financial institution. Go have those conversations, because a 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever discount or improvement on that area in your cost of goods, all of that drops to the bottom line. So if you're someone who has $200,000 worth of net income at the end of the year, but you've got $190,000 worth of debt service for equipment or anything else like that, little increases could make a huge difference in the amount of profitability that you get to either reinvest back in the business or get to put in your pocket and take home and feel actually a little bit more successful. So finally, the most important thing from today's conversation and this week overall is, first and foremost, to remind you, if you've gotten this far, you're likely following many of my videos here, and you know that I'm on a bit of a journey. And this journey is to retire my parents from our ActionCOACH business by the end of 2026. And I'm super excited to sit here and go, looking at, today is February 26th at time of this recording, a little just under 2 full months into the year so far. And I think we're actually on track. There's been some major wins, major movements, progression forward. As I said in, I think, my video last week, bit of an emotional ride with fear, excitement, stress, like all the different things kind of culminating together. But as things progress, as things move forward, there's one very important thing that I think each of you need to do more of, because I see it all the time in my clients I want to make sure that you're doing the same thing. And that is celebrate. Celebrate the progress, celebrate the successes. It doesn't have to be big, but take the time to celebrate something. So today, as I sign off here today, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to celebrate with a beverage. So cheers. Let's go build some amazing businesses together.